What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Back with another cast over for you. We got 3 Crow taking on Benno on Repulsion. I'm told that this game is silly. Let's get into it. 3 Crow is going to be the Ultramarine Terran in the top right. Benno will be the Glacial Terran in the bottom left. We'll go ahead and set up our camera hotkeys while we talk a little bit about this map. It's a fairly familiar map to anybody who's been watching Cosmonic Brood War tournaments, because in fact it is the starter map of Ascension group stages. Widely considered a map that I think most people would say is fair. You've got fairly reasonable access to a high ground third here, which does open you up to another east side path, or west side, of course, if you're on the north. You can also take this base, which is a little bit harder to defend, but might be easier if you are airborne. It does open you up to an attack from the bridge over here, but it's a fairly long one that you could defend from ground. So there's basically two different options that are a little bit far away from your main and natural, but they do give you a lot of value if you can defend the extra option, the extra angle of attack that it opens you up towards. Meanwhile, we have a stockade for both players. 3 Crows is slightly faster. Generally, the accepted meta for starting as Terran at this stage is more or less just going to go ahead and jump into Bio at the beginning. And if you are going TVT, which I'm sure 3 Crow will be prepared for here because he's aware of Benno's race. I think 3 Crow, on the other hand, would have been random for this game, but you can never know for sure. Stockades are the safest option, and then beyond that, you will have the opportunity to transition into mech. In fact, there's already enough gas for a fulcrum, but considering the rate of gas acquisition with 3 people fully saturating this geyser, it kind of feels to me like maybe 3 Crow is going to be attempting something else. Either that or is maybe just not super optimized. Benno, on the other hand, is clearly setting up for a fulcrum. We should see him throwing one down relatively soon. But maybe not. Maybe he's going to add a vestry instead. Just continuously building Mavericks. 2 of them will be enough to kill this Mason with some effort, especially with the stim pack. So, in fact, 3 Crow is only going to see the stockade and not anything else. Again, there's a lot of money in the background here, so he now has enough gas to go for a star pad if that's what he wants. And it looks like that will be the case. Benno's scout was a little bit on the later side, so there will be 2, in fact 3 Cyprians here. That's what the gas has been used for by 3 Crow. And he's adding another stockade, so he wants to go bio play into whatever Benno has. And not really getting too much useful information there, but Benno will have been surprised probably to see Mass Cyprian or Double Cyprian in the early stages of the game, and no Mavericks in sight. You can see the difference in terms of training time and resources. Cyprian does cost 50 gas, so you'll generally have a lower amount of them. And Benno is going to respond to this by taking an expansion. Meanwhile, we have a Vestry add-on bright and early here. That's kind of an interesting choice. One of the Cyprians is hanging out over here to spot for any ground army movements. A Wraith coming from the star pad, that's mostly going to be used for scouting. May also antagonize the mineral line here, but I think as long as the Cyprians are in the general vicinity of the area, probably going to be hard-pressed to get any lasting damage. Masons have more HP than the other race's workers, so when you see 70 HP here, that's 7 shots that the Wraith has to do. Would be pretty surprising to me if he manages to make it happen. I've also noticed that Benno has this habit of not setting the rally points on the star pads, and that will make it a little bit hard to see that your Wraith is complete because they are permacloaked in CMBW. So that's something that he has to be aware of. Now, another thing, though, is that the Wraith obviously does cost less overall gas than the Cyprian. And if the Cyprians are just out by themselves, you know, a Wraith can absolutely win a 1v1 in that engagement here. And of course, economically speaking, as the Ministry does get started, I would say a little bit later than I expected for Benno, but still, started nonetheless. That is going to be an option for 3 Crow to follow up on. So the stack of Cyprians and Clerics is discovered. I'm not 100% sure if 3 Crow noticed that, but he does have an Ancial in production, which is going to be a passive mobile detection, as well as obviously protection for anything in a small radius around it. So the Wraith is just going to confirm that there's no secret shenanigans side bases, and the Ministry will eventually give Benno some pretty good parity between him and his opponent. 3 Crows are behind by 1 worker, but has gone ahead and dropped a Watchdog for defense. It's not supremely optimally placed because Wraiths can still harass the worker line from this position, so you might want to instead put it over here. But Repulsion is a map that you can't cleanly drop only 1 static defense structure versus Wraiths. In fact, I think very few maps are like that in general. So the Wraith, with the residual Fog of War, because obviously Brood War responds a little bit weirdly, is most likely going to be in a spot here where it saw some of this army move out. But Benno doesn't seem to be too interested in reacting. He's adding a Watchdog of his own and an Anchor in his mineral line with a Watchdog placed further up for general vision. And that is because he obviously did scout the star pad in production. So we'll have to wait and see what Benno's reaction to this move out is going to be. But he's now very much aware that there's no military at the base anymore. Yet he doesn't have a Trojan or any military of his own on site. So I think that's going to be a bit awkward for Benno. He does get scouted here with that Wraith, and that was a little bit wasteful by 3Crow, but the advantage is that he should know that there were no Cyprians in that anchor. And in fact, he might not be aware of this, but there's no Cyprians at all here for Benno, and this could absolutely result in a total runover. Obviously, in recent tournament history, Benno has been struggling a little bit. A couple of rounds without genuinely being able to score any dubs. But he did look more and more prepared to fight his fellow Terran in the last Ascension group. Ascension 5, he was in Group C with Nablime and Scholar. So there is that for him. Clearly an Ahmed drop is being manifest. The Hurricanes are going to lead the charge into the Mavericks, and this should be a very effective attack. We'll have to see what the reaction is from Benno, because I honestly don't see how he could possibly defend against it. He's going to go ahead and try for the repairs, but a little bit late there. And yeah, instantaneously, you see Ahmed chasing him down. Now, the Anciel has to get out of there before it gets killed by the Watchdog. There is going to be an anchor on the low ground, but at this stage, the fact that 3Crow is at one base has afforded him a lot more military. And as a result, we absolutely do see way more of an advantage coming in here for 3Crow. Now, there's going to be some Cyprians that are going to prepare to staff that anchor, and we're going to have to wait and see on that one. Ministry will not land, but at least be in this area to try to block the Cyprian shots, because obviously Cyprian shots will get blocked by that. So that's one angle where, obviously, with no Hurricanes, there's not really any way of guaranteed damage. And an Atlas coming. This is ballsy from Benno. I'm really quite surprised he was able to do that. Meanwhile, 3Crow will now take an expansion. He might even go for 2. Yeah, it looks like he's going to double expand behind this. He does have a Huracan drop coming. Benno's Wraith does get sniped because of the Anciel's detection. And here comes the anchor. They're going to go ahead and move their way forward. And that might cause some issues here for 3Crow. He's not exactly prepared for it. Now, his drop was over here. It definitely could have gone in. But yeah, at this stage, we're looking at... Okay, one of the anchors does fall, but there's only a handful of Cyprians at this stage. This is not looking too hot. But here comes the drop with the Hurricanes. It looks like maybe 5 of them got out. This could absolutely cause some serious issues, especially with the rest of his unit still being occupied over here. He's got to pull the Masons, try to get them out. He's actually got even worker count. Well, not anymore, but he had a pretty close worker count there. So now looks like we're down to only 2 active Hurricanes. They're going to try to disrupt the building of the Atlas. And again, these clerics are just healing themselves perpetually. He does need to respond to this somehow. He's waypointed a Cyprian on a move command, and it only started firing a little bit later. Eventually, this one Maverick and a couple other units... Well, oh, the clerics actually just make their charge over here, trying to keep Ahmed alive as long as possible. You can see both of our players floating a lot of money at this stage, but eventually the threats are expunged. And the second ministry is already done, whereas, I mean, I guess technically it's true for 3Crow. In a couple of spots, he's actually going to go ahead and quadruple expand, but has no workers behind it. So he will eventually get that, but again, like, he could have been adding, a bunch of other options here. He definitely had the ability to train more units, build more production structures while that fight was going on. But his opponent can't punish him for not doing that just yet, although he is at tier 2. So that's an area where Benno does have a distinct advantage. Like, shockingly, the amount of damage dealt wasn't super exhaustive. I mean, this is in the context of Benno only having the Star Pad and the Stockade. That's it. That's all he has. So that's pretty crazy. A third Stockade is on the way for 3Crow. He's a ways off of affording tier 2, but obviously when he starts saturating the gas at all of his expansions, it should be feasible. He does have a sortie of Wraiths available, and that will help him out quite a bit, I think, just in terms of responding to any threats. Honestly, considering Benno was also floating a lot of money, and he's gone ahead and tried to expand. Again, those Wraiths, at least one of them could be scouting around. We actually see Benno doing the same exact thing with his Wraith. He's got a couple of units just sort of scattered about here, right? We see fully stocked anchors. One of them has 1 Cyprian, 2 Mavericks. One of them has 2 Cyprians. And we just see more and more stockades being put down here. These Trojans are completely empty. This Wraith idle for now. I think technically Benno might have superior economy, but obviously that is fleeting with the regards to the other bases being set up here. Looks like this Wraith will start to tickle. Obviously that can be responded to. Looks like the Cyprians are going to be scrambled for it. He could be pulling this Mason to keep it alive, but not a huge requirement here. He's going to start adding watchdogs, I'm sure, to all of his bases. Or if not, he's going to start losing some workers over here. When Benno sees this base, he's going to be like, okay, my opponent does have the economic advantage. When he sees this base, if he sees this base, that's also going to result in, I think, some rear soar, we could say. Now, there was a move out, or an attempted startup anyway, with 8 Cyprians in those Trojans. Again, oh, we have a Fountainhead coming. Okay, so Benno wants to either go Starport, although he doesn't have great gas income right now, or he wants to go Mantles. That's my guess based on the Fountainhead. I guess technically he could be going Captaincy into Tinkerer's Tower, but nobody seems to do that. And in fact, we were talking just recently on a dev stream about whether or not we would even have that be a requirement, or whether we'll be able to cut tier 2.5 entirely, as well as 3.5, and just enable everything, but increase the cost of individual production facilities and add-ons that did previously require it. So there's a number of options here. But yes, we do indeed have 12, by the way, Cyprians. Wraiths are continuing to scout out stuff that this is discovered, but there's a couple of watchdogs in place. Funnily enough, you could still harass from the top left, but there are no workers over there. So some Mavericks are on the way. They have stimmed across. There is no anti-ground, but the Wraiths are holding in a bit of a holding pattern. There's not really much defense over here. Again, I mean, we do see some Mantles coming. Cyprians. Okay, Cyprian and Mavericks. I honestly think this is going to absolutely end disastrously for Benno once again. That's 12 Cyprians, but again, they can't respond to any threats that come in from the other side, right? So that completely wipes out a lot of the workers. He's actually now going to try to target the Atlas. I think if he mixed in like 2 or 4 Hurricanes or something like that with this army, he would have had more efficacy. The Mantles are done, so the Fountainhead being wounded or inactive is not the end of the world necessarily. But while this is lifted off, he can't build any Sentinels or any other tier 2 things, right? Terran Tech needs to be landed in order to be used. And the Fountainhead is now going to be under target. I don't think that'll be savable in the same way. This Anseal is taking flak from the Watchdogs, but the Masons fought back against the Mavericks instead of, scrambling the Wraiths. So that is a response, I suppose. And so, yeah, indeed, the Anseal is going to be pushed away. Ramses are out. Again, this stockade is absolutely going to block stuff, and it doesn't look like there's been much of a reaction here, but the Fountainhead did go down. So he's limited to just the 3 Mantles, and he's even going to lose his stockade at the end. This Watchdog is burning down. The Anseals, or Anseal singular, will start to fall back. I'm not sure with the, what with the Sentinels at the 3rd and at this position. I don't actually know if the Bioforce is really going to be doing too much here. Like, in theory, he might be able to flank from the other side. And we do indeed have an Atlas coming, along with a lot more stockades, because there's just so many minerals. The Sentinel float is a move. Again, there are 4 Wraiths here, but I think 3 Crow may have forgotten about them. He's not responding to the minimap whatsoever, so he's only going to get the attack notification. It's funny, I was watching Artosis play Zero Space, and they actually have a notification saying you've sighted an enemy, which is just the goofiest thing possible. But obviously, that would have helped 3 Crow out here in this case. Just surprise, surprise, we're not interested in programming something like that in the end of the game. Minimap awareness. It seems like a good idea to have that as a skill that you test. Honestly, I really do think he just forgot about the Wraiths. He could have just killed the Sentinel at any point. Atlas coming in here now for 3 Crow. The Fountainhead has rebuilt, but it's in an awkward position. I mean, once you deplete this mineral field, you can harvest that one again. But that's actually pretty awkward. I don't know that he's going to be needing full saturation on that anyway, although he has caught back up into active workers. There's an array of Sentinels being put up over here, and some mineral saturation happening at the 3rd base. 3 Crow is ahead economically, but, the big but here comes from does he really have much tech just yet? And the answer is no. He just loses all of his bioforce to some Ramses. I don't think he got a single kill. Oh no, he must have killed 2 Ramses, judging by the rubble here. So that's a thing. That is something. But he absolutely does need to start adding more things. So he's adding 4 starports. Okay. I was wondering what his tier 2 acquisition would be. He almost has enough money to drop the... he almost has enough money to drop the Fountainhead. And there you go. I don't know why you'd lift off there. There's a watchdog. Absolutely brutalized. Okay, well, the tower silliness is ongoing. Here's a Wraith. There is still a watchdog. He's rebuilding the Ministry, even though he floated it over here. Maybe he's going to use that for this base. He is taking this one as well. So he's going up to a 5th base now, technically, in the top left. He's got some gas harvesting over here, but not much mineral income. Although he's floating 2K, so maybe it doesn't matter. I was practicing PvP matches with DF yesterday. I'm recording this on the 3rd of October. And DF did do some work on practicing just spending his money. And I think that's something that absolutely most of these, the class 2 Cosmonarchs, that's our second class of competitor, whereas our class 1, our first class is, the champions or contenders. That's a Nabla Mystery Meat Shambler. Absolutely brutalized here by the Ramses. But yeah, just practicing spending your money, keeping it low, even if it might not be the best acquisition, you might not be saving enough money for teching up or something. That can be a separate thing when you know that you're deliberately not spending money. But in this case, it doesn't feel deliberate, right? So there's going to be a bunch of Gorgons. Now, I think the Gorgons will be pierced by the armor pen of the Ramses. We'll find out when they spawn if they have 1 armor or 2. Wyverns, on the other hand, would be protected. Okay, it looks like Gorgons are going to be protected as well. So the Ministry goes down, back down to 4 bases. Woe is him. There is a 4th one up here for Benno as well. And the Ramses are just simply going to march back home, content with their victory for now. I'm just scoping out the tech here. With the Fountainhead, he did not construct additional mantles, so it almost feels like maybe that was a bit of a waste of income, but he wants to keep his options flexible in case he needs them for a later date. These starports could be added onto. Looks like there's some consideration here. Yeah, it's just going to be rotaries out the wazoo. All of them are rotaries. So he's going to go for Mass Sundog or Salamander. And I think Salamander would be okay, but Ramses are surprisingly cost-efficient, right? They do have a pretty good crowd control setup. Now, if you can block them with something like Gorgons or Wyverns or ideally a more frontline ground unit, your Bio Ball might stand a chance. But as of right now, it's just Ramses. It's nothing but Ramses. The Emperor. The Pharaoh. I mean, that's what his name of the weapon is, right? Pharaoh cannons. Huh. Now, the Wraith is going to go ahead and scout this orphaned Ministry here. But that's not really where the Ramses are headed. They are headed over here, where actually there are some Sentinels. So maybe he wants to avoid that. But he's going to come around from the right-hand side. And again, the Sentinels do have pretty good range. So there will be some losses here, but he should be able to clean this up. Although I say that, the Ministry is in a really, really good spot to block a lot of these shots. So, depending on what happens here, I mean, particularly with the Masons blocking, when you intercept the first shot with something like the Mason, you're actually dealing half damage. So that was, awkward here for Benno. He could have moved his units up and around, or, up and down, split them so that they can't damage both flanks of them at the same time, and that way they wouldn't be blocked by the Ministry. But then the Masons also intercepted some of those shots, and thus only half of the damage went on to the Sentinel itself. So that ended up being pretty good. Now, there is a sneaky proxy Daedala being placed at the bottom right-hand corner, perhaps to save him from potentially getting owned by a Wraith flyover or something. And there are more Salamanders being built, as well as some more Ahmed drops being prepared. Okay. That seems to be the answer. Now, with the Daedala on the way, we don't see that on the way for 3-Crow. Just looking around. Now I have to check every base. They're learning from Inaz, who built his Iral Iris at like the strangest locations multiple times before rebuilding it in his main in that one Ascension game against Heltrix. So what is the Daedala going to offer? That's the question. And if it's scouted, I mean, the Ahmeds can absolutely descend upon that. We have 3 potential drops, and they're going to be mixed in with this formidable air army. Right? There's going to be 12 Salamanders. Wraith is revealed by the detection of the Atlas. And it'll also scout out this fairly large army, What does Benno want to do? I don't know that his screen was over there, but he's still just sort of chilling. He's got a lot of money, and he's just chilling. His daedal is done. He's going to add apothecaries. Okay, that's his play. At least 3 apothecaries. You know, he's got 3 mantles, 3 apothecaries. Looks like he's going to maybe look for more. This could be an iron foundry. No, another apothecary. He actually has enough to go straight to Atelier because he's just not spent any of his money on actual units. Obviously, when the apothecaries are scouted, that is going to be a big reveal. There's a lot of watchdogs over here, but obviously when you buy time for the Ahmeds to unload, there's like no anti-ground defense here at all. The rally point has 3 Ramses. Like, again, looking at the money, you could absolutely be spending this. You could absolutely be on permacycle for some of these things to be pumping out units. And it looks like they just flew over the watchdogs, or the watchdog and the sentinel up there. They did not seem to care too much. And yeah, okay, there's no crowd control here, so the stack up is not going to be a problem. Just unloading Ahmeds upon him. He should see the apothecaries. He should realize, okay, I'm up against a tier 2, or rather tier 3 opponent. What is that going to matter? I mean, there's 2 Cyprians in this anchor. Ahmed will take care of that eventually. And the mantles are now springing to life, but I think some of them might get burnt down pretty quickly. All the anti-air has been killed by the air units, so even all of those watchdogs was simply not enough. And the salamanders are going to stack up a lot of their anti-building damage. You see 2 out of 4 apothecaries are already down. This one might get a single silver tongue out. Ramses are scrambled back here, and they will pose somewhat of a threat to this air force. But all of the apothecaries went down without a single silver tongue being able to be finished. And now they can lay a lot of area denial damage over here onto the ramp. And if this force falls, that could be everything. But it looks like 3Crow's not interested in, you know, turning the screws just yet. He'll clear out the star pad. If he clears out that mantle, that could be a big deal because there's no... that's the last one that he can make. He has to remake his Atlas at this current stage. And he's actually going to lose all of his Ramses anyway. What does he want to do? He still has his tier 3.5. He's dropping more apothecaries, not interested in nanite assemblies nor iron foundries. He has nothing else. He's got the well bore on 2 bases, although this one isn't completed. And nothing on the right-hand side, but he's completely lost control of his main. A single Ahmed is still alive, just reveals that remaining anchor. Some more Ramses that were rallied over here are getting popped. It's just the 9... Well, okay, there's 11 salamanders. There's 4 back at home. It definitely feels 3Crow favored, but I've been saying that this entire game. The last watchdog, okay, it claims the life of one more salamander on the way out. And okay, the wellbore is canceled. I mean, that's a lot of resources, but he's got a lot anyway in the bank. So, doesn't really matter. Adding more apothecaries. Is that really the play? Do you really need apothecaries right now versus mass air? I mean, centaurs would chew this up if he could get some nanites up. It just doesn't seem like he... I mean, he has this area. He's got this mason he could be building with. There's still 2 Ahmeds over here just making sure that depleted base isn't guarded. No attempt at, you know, reclaiming anymore. We have the anvil still. Now encroaching on this central base here, which does have the wellbore, which is obviously very important. Watchdogs are not long for this world. They are doing some additional damage to the salamanders, but it's a piecemeal amount. And another, this time a 3 Eidolon drop. Clearly here for some nukes. Honestly, if you just paint nukes here, can it even be defended against? There is no anti-ground. There's only the sentinels. He should just straight up like start nuking this area, right? More watchdogs being added. That's it. Okay, now there's going to be some some silver tongues. The question is that really going to be enough? And I'm not sure that it is. Well, okay. If he walks in here, silver tongues do some damage. Oh, he's bopped. It's over. He should just be painting back over here, right? There's this detects. Just nuke here. He has a 3rd one. Where's he going to go with it? Okay, he's going to come up from the right-hand side. If he hugs all the way down here, he can paint the nuke at the ministry. Okay, instead he's... No! There's sentinels there! Oh, jeez. Okay, well, he's going to remake his structure. Rather, his morning star. Oh, my goodness. Green eggs and spam on the Discord server. Just, he couldn't catch a break, man. He asked for nukes all the time. He kept saying, dude, we can get nukes. Can we get nukes? Look, there's an anvil. It better get used. Well, technically, it did get used. Now, there's 17 salamanders here. This base is going to need a lift off. There's not really much over here. Okay, he did figure out I can use this. He's sending a Mason out to, okay, he's sending it out to where his third is, but no, that's going to be enough for Benno. He had tier 3. Honestly, he probably thought his opponent had a lot more than he really did, because looking at this game, he absolutely could have gotten back. He could have clapped back. He could have done something, potentially, you know? Like, if you let me pilot Benno's position from that angle, I don't know what happens, but it could have been great. It could have been glorious. Maybe he could have made it a much longer game than it really was. But anyway, that's that. It was not a 40-minute game, obviously. That's just the timer being goofy. I guess we'll look to fix that since I can't block it, or I'm not blocking it with my camera anymore. But I hope you guys appreciated the cast. Wow. Benno and 3Crow at it again with some hilarious TVT action. Join us for another cast over whenever I release another one. At this rate, they seem to be coming out daily, but we'll see. I need more replays, more cast overs, of course. And when we do actually get some matches that are ranked, I will be sure to denote that in the overlay and obviously in the cast itself, talking about how this is the first ranked match we have here. You know, assuming I cast all of them, we'll see about that. But yeah, join us on the server, hang out, talk shit. See you next time.